You want One Piece, but not the hundreds of hours it takes to catch up? I watched all 1,155 episodes for you. Now you get 1 minute, 1 episode for every filler arc, starting with Warship Island arc. On a marine ship, a little girl breaks out of her room after taking down a guard. Marines search the ship. She climbs the mast, accidentally pops the sail open. The ship tilts hard. Then she jumps into a lifeboat to escape into the fog. Over on the Going Merry, Luffy asks if they've hit the Grand Line yet, and Nami's like, "It's been 2 days." Then Usopp spots birds off the side, and Luffy stretches out to grab what he thinks is food, but he yanks in an unconscious girl instead, and the impact knocks Zoro right off the boat. The girl wakes up when she smells Sanji's cooking, but the second she realizes she's on a pirate ship, she freaks out and refuses to eat anything. Later that night, hunger wins. She sneaks into the kitchen and witnesses Luffy getting snapped into a giant mousetrap Sanji set to stop food thieves. While everyone's waking up, she steals some of Luffy's food, and Nami calmly reassures her they're not evil. Next morning, she tries to make breakfast as a peace offering, but she uses the wrong spice and turns everything into lava. She finally introduces herself as Apis from Warship Island, but when they ask why the Marines had her locked up, she refuses to say. Sanji backs her up. It's her business. Meanwhile, the Marines spot the Merry, realize Apis is probably on board, and move in to attack. Cannon fire starts. Usopp warns the crew, and the Straw Hats catch a gust of wind and escape south. The Marines hesitate when they realize where the Merry is heading, the Calm Belt. The Straw Hats celebrate too early, until Nami notices something's wrong. Zoro asks why it feels like they aren't moving, and Nami screams as it hits her. They've drifted into the Calm Belt. The Merry drifts into the Calm Belt and ends up sitting on a Sea King's head, surrounded by more Sea Kings. Zoro whispers, "Don't move." But Usopp panics and yells, and a Sea King attacks. Apis falls overboard. Luffy stretches out and saves her, and she notices his rubber arm. While he's pulling her up, she spots the Sea King's nose and goes, "Swing me down!" She yanks a nostril hair, and the Sea King sneezes so hard it launches the Merry like a rocket straight out of the Calm Belt. They sail on and spot what looks like a gigantic ship in the fog. Apis explains it's Warship Island, shaped like a warship. At the port, locals see the pirate flag and panic, but Apis vouches for the Straw Hats. Her grandfather Bokuden shows up, thanks them, and invites them to a celebration. Meanwhile, Marines spot the Merry, report to Nelson Royal, and he orders Eric to capture Apis again. Back at Bokuden's, Nami presses about why the Marines want her. Bokuden mentions an old legend about millennial dragons and a lost island, but it still doesn't explain Apis. Then Apis sneaks out with pork buns, and Luffy and Nami follow her trail to a cave. Inside, Apis is feeding Grandpa Ryu, a real dragon. She reveals she ate the Hiso Hiso no Mi and can hear animals' thoughts. Ryu is searching for his dragon nest on the lost island, and Apis says the Marines took her because her dragon claw pendant made them think she knows where it is. Luffy immediately promises to help Ryu get home, while Eric closes in on the island. Now that the crew finally knows why Apis is being hunted, they decide they're not waiting around. They're getting Ryu out of here and finding the lost island. But escaping isn't clean. A new enemy shows up who wants Ryu for himself, and Marines close in fast. Zoro and Usopp steer the Merry in tight and line it up beside this thin rock ledge like a quick pickup. Nami and Apis rush Ryu onto a cart, getting him moved before anyone can grab him. Meanwhile, Luffy and Sanji hold the line, fighting off the Marines just long enough to buy them seconds, because seconds are the whole difference here. And right at the last moment, the Merry pulls the cart free, dragging Ryu to safety, and the Straw Hats bolt off the island, officially heading out to search for the lost island. After the Straw Hats escape, the Marines move to pursue. Eric isn't worried. He wants the Straw Hats to lead him to the Millennial Dragons, and he even tries to keep updates from Commodore Nelson. Nelson still finds out, gets furious that Eric is hiding a dragon, and orders a fleet toward Warship Island. At sea, the Straw Hats tow Ryu while searching. He's asleep until Apis accidentally spills hot food on him, and it jogs his memory. Lost Island is east of Warship Island. They rush there. Luffy spots smoke ahead, but it's a mirage, like the Mary's reflection. He investigates and gets pulled in, and from the Marine's view, the Mary vanishes. Eric prepares to follow. Inside, the fog is brutal and a storm hits. The towing ropes snap. Zoro catches them. Luffy drags Ryu back. Then Usopp spots an island in the storm's eye, and Nami steers for it. On the hidden island, they climb to a dragon emblem building. Aethys finds a slot matching her pendant, possibly a key. But the ground collapses and they fall into a temple filled with ancient paintings that hint the real Lost Island is still out there. The Straw Hats reach the dome at the mountaintop, but the ground collapses and drops them into an underground chamber. Luffy finds a ceiling piece painted with a Senenryu. Apis thinks the dragon's nest is here, until Nami reads the murals and realizes this island was the royal court, and the real nest was at Warship Island, later sinking into the sea. Ryu watches birds flying through the ruins and finally remembers. The nest is east of Warship Island summit. Eric reveals he's been listening and attacks. Luffy breaks a way out, Eric fights Zoro, and the others escape with Apis and Ryu on the cart. Zoro chases Eric, stops him from jumping onto the cart, then Luffy stretches out and yanks Zoro back onto the Mary as they set sail. Eric vows to pursue. The Mary bursts out of the invisible barrier, shocking the Marines, and Hardy orders a chase. Near Warship Island, Nelson Royal traps them by chaining his ships into a wall, so the Straw Hats decide to board the Marine ships and cut the chains. The Mary weaves through Nelson Royal's cannon fire, and Hardy, watching Nelson's chained fleet, assumes the Straw Hats are basically done. Eric doesn't. He grabs a rowboat and goes after them alone, because he wants the dragon's nest for himself. Nelson fires again. Luffy uses Gumby Gum Balloon and bounces a cannonball back into one of Nelson's ships. Furious, Nelson orders the big elimination cannon. But Usopp shoots a cannonball straight into it and blows it up from the inside. Then Luffy turns his arms into a Gumby Gun crossing bridge, letting Sanji and Zoro board the Marine ship. Luffy launches over too. Luffy and Sanji tear through Marines, while Zoro slices the chains linking the ships. But Eric goes for the real prize. He boards the raft carrying Ryu and Apis, hooks it to his rowboat, and drags them away. Nelson demands the dragon. Eric refuses, betraying him. So Nelson orders his ships to fire on Eric. Eric and Apis struggle. Apis gets thrown down, and then Ryu finally stands. He knocks Eric off the boat and roars. Then, to Apis's horror, Ryu takes off and flies toward Nelson's ship, getting blasted by cannonballs midair. Ryu can't take it. He falls into the sea, tells Luffy to keep Apis safe, and dies. Ryu goes down from the cannon fire, and Luffy refuses to accept it. He's yelling at him to live. Nelson's Marines throw a harpoon, and Luffy straight up catches it and whips it back, smashing up the Marine ship. Then Ryu gathers what little he has left and lets out one final massive call, summoning other millennial dragons. Luffy seems to understand him and promises he'll pass Ryu's message to Apis. Right after that, Luffy goes on the attack. Gum Gum Rocket grabs onto a passing dragon and launches a battle axe kick straight into Nelson's flagship. The ship splits in half and the Marines panic and retreat. Then the sea and Warship Island start trembling like an earthquake, and the water level drops. A hidden island rises from the ocean, Lost Island. Nami realizes the truth. Millennial dragons aren't named because they live 1,000 years. They migrate back to their nest once every 1,000 years. That's why the island goes missing. Dragons begin landing, and you can even see ancient dragon remains fossilized under coral, the dragonite everyone's been hunting. Ryu lies still at the shoreline. Apis breaks down, screaming that he promised he'd get better. Luffy tells her Ryu made his dream come true, and then adds the final twist. Millennial dragons are reborn at the nest. And right on cue, an egg hatches. A baby dragon chirps at Apis, and she understands it immediately. Finally, Eric washes up. Nelson tries to talk deals. Eric snaps and slashes him with his devil fruit power. The Straw Hats look back and spot Eric standing there, dripping wet, fixing his weird ice cream hair like nothing happened. After Eric slashes Nelson, he turns to the Straw Hats with a smug offer. Join him, split the Dragonite, and chase eternal life together. Nami shuts it down fast. Those Dragonite fossils are ancient remains. You can't just smash them up for profit. Eric pivots and says, fine, then we take it from the living millennial dragons. Aethys refuses and rushes him. Eric fires an attack at her. Usopp dives in and saves her at the last second. Zoro reaches for Wado Ichimonji, but Luffy steps forward. He promised Ryu he'd handle this. Luffy opens with Gum Gum Pistol. Eric dodges and counters hard, slicing Luffy up and bragging that a rubber man can't beat him. Eric floods the area with slashing attacks, and Luffy goes, I'm not dodging. He charges straight through, grabs Eric, and lands Gum Gum Bell, shattering Eric's glasses, then finishes with Gum Gum Bazooka, blasting him away. With Eric dealt with, the Straw Hats prepare to leave. Luffy invites Apis to come Mahom, but she stays behind to protect the dragon's nest with her grandpa. She says she won't see the dragons return in 1,000 years, but her descendants will. The crew says goodbye and sets sail. Now it's finally time for the Grand Line, but Nami's map looks off. They realize a powerful current is the key through the mountain passage. They line up for the entrance. The rudder control snaps from the force, and Luffy jumps out using Gum Gum Balloon to keep the Mary from smashing into the rock arches. Right near the end, Eric shows up again. One wrong move and he'll shred the ship. Nami baits him by pointing out Dragonite nearby, then kicks his leg and dumps him into the current, sending him spiraling away. The crew finally bursts through, laughing, celebrating, making wishes. Everyone except Luffy, as the Going Merry enters the Grand Line. Okay, after all this math, you just saved 2 hours and 40 minutes. That's not including the time for intros and outros, because most of us skip that. And if you like this type of series, let me know. It took me so long to edit this video, so please like and subscribe. It means a lot.